Social Security has tilted to favor higher earners who delay claiming benefits, report says. All right, this is from the Boston Globe, and the Boston Globe has no political preference, do they? Let's take a gander, shall we? It's kind of like the world comes to an end. New York Times reports women and children hit hardest. This sounds like what this is here. So let's keep reading if we shall. This is Dateline December 2nd, 2019. Here is former Tufts Health Plan CEO Jim Roosevelt, who says Social Security is now less progressive. Legislation creating the program was signed by his grandfather, FDR. Getting ready to say, I wonder if he has some relation. So let's read this because he kind of looks like him, doesn't he? The nation's Social Security, I feel bad for this guy. Can you imagine just living on the legacy of your granddad or your dad? I always felt sad for guys like that. It's like, he's just speaking as if he had any knowledge of what is, just as sad. Like he has nothing for him is through his dad or his granddad here. The nation's Social Security program was designed with special concern for the least fortunate Americans to keep them from sinking into poverty. But recent demographic changes have tilted the system against lower earners who claim Social Security benefits early, even as they rewarded higher earners who claim benefits later. How does it tilt against lower earners? I mean, there's not, because I claim later doesn't mean they get less benefit. That's inherently, that's just a stupid thing to say. Had tilted the system against lower earners. No, it doesn't tilt it against lower earners. Come on, man. It's like saying, Josh, you claim late, you and Pablo, that means you're taking money from a higher earner? That's just freaking stupid, man. Oh, God almighty. According to Boston College. Yes. The report from their Center for Retirement Research details how longer lifespans have scrambled the decades-old calculations that determines the payouts Americans receive at full retirement age and the adjustments for claiming Social Security benefits earlier or later. Higher earners who can afford to delay benefits are living significantly longer and reaping benefits longer than poorer people who need the money right away. That me having more benefit does not take away from Grandma Jones, doesn't make her have less. That has nothing, the two things have nothing to do with it. There's no correlation. Me having more doesn't reduce hers. So this right here, I get tilted in favor of higher earners. I get that. But it doesn't take it where they say, it doesn't tilt the system against lower earners, Boston Globe or Boston College. I guarantee, and I've read Chen before. I guarantee that, I shouldn't guarantee it. I don't trust any of these guys anymore. I can't imagine BC would actually say lower earners are being penalized because of the claiming decisions of higher earners. All right, lower earners were supposed to gain more from Social Security, said Anki Chen, who authored the report. But those who can't wait to collect at their full retirement age are now getting penalized. The hell's that? They've always been penalized. Higher earners get penalized. Everyone gets penalized for taking it early. What the hell is this? Many of those who begin collecting later are often seniors in good health, working white-collar jobs deep in their 60s. And they can look forward to larger Social Security checks for decades. It's only the latest evidence of what many see as a swing away from Social Security's foundational promise to help low and middle income Americans in retirement. The program's become less progressive, says that guy Roosevelt, who's also a former associate commissioner for retirement policy at the SSA. Can you imagine when he applied for that job, someone said, yeah, we're not going to hire you. Well, you have to hire me because I'm the grandson of FDR. I mean, I hate to say privilege. This is the example of class privilege right here. It's not had nothing to do with racial privilege. It's class privilege. In America, we have class privilege. Now, there was a white privilege for many years, for sure, against Native Americans and blacks. I do not deny that. Do not deny that. That's a fact. In fact, there's a white male privilege. I do not deny that. That doesn't mean all white male benefited from it. Doesn't mean that. But if you were a white male in America, you were not enslaved. Were there indentured servants? Yes. Did the Irish need not apply? Yes. That's not the same thing, my friends. Those who say, my grandfathers came here and they said Irish need not apply, that's not the same thing. Please, stop. It's embarrassing from someone of Irish ancestry to compare our plight with that of a black man in America. Just please, stop. So this guy is a beneficiary of class privilege. Now, happen to be he was white for his grandparents and great grandparents and whatnot, so they benefit for sure. But there is a class privilege beneficiary that happens, and those class privileges are still here, and they transcend race nowadays. I've told you many times a story of me cleaning the carpets of a very wealthy, well-respectable black guy in McLean, Virginia. Nicest wife, parents were great. The wife was very fantastic. Fed me lunch, gave me a tip. Nice family, wonderful Christian people, love them to death. But they had a class privilege because they ran in the elite categories of Washington, D.C., where me, a poor white boy from an island in Maine, was cleaning their carpets. I would resent it, actually, if the kids got into affirmative action because the kids were half black. In fact, in that case, it's probably not even half black. I would resent that, frankly. I'd say, wait a second, this isn't right. These people would never, that wasn't an issue. Let's just put it this way. But anyway, that would be resentful for sure, because that was a beneficiary of a class privilege that I would never have. And so you got to transcend the white privilege stuff and look at more of a class privilege, because there's certainly a class privilege in America. I don't deny that in the least. All right. So, it's only, okay. He pointed to other factors such as a cap on income subject to Social Security withdrawals that also benefit the highest earners. Your own granddad, the reason he had the cap there, freaking Jim, is because he said we have to get a buy-in from everybody. And if we don't have a cap, the highest earners are not going to buy into it, because they're basically going to be a welfare transfer payment from the high earners to the poor. He says we have to make it so it's all have skin in the game. I love how they use freaking half of the information against Social Security that his granddad would never have found true, but then they just happen to disregard what FDR said, that it has to be buy-in from all taxpayers about the benefits of the system. That's why there's a flipping cap. If you're going to use FDR and say this is what he would have thought, you got to use it both sides. And Social Security doesn't take care of the lower and middle income people as well as intended to. Bull freaking pocky, man. It's a cap in income that also benefits the higher earners. It doesn't benefit the higher earners. They get no extra benefit from Social Security because of a cap on income. It's just freaking nuts. Social Security Annual Statistical Supplement, FRA, full retirement age, disability conversions are excluded, all right? So FRA, what does this say? I don't even know what is that? Women, okay, so men, the majority of women by far and away claim at 62. It's too bad. I guarantee a lot of those are divorcees and single women. Actually, well, not the majority, but certainly the highest amount. What's the amount there? It's not the majority, but the most under a minority. I can't remember what the word is, but by far and away, more women claim at 62 than any other age by far. More men claim at 62 than any other age by far, but at least almost a quarter of men claim at FRA, so that's good. Employees who earn more than 132 don't have to pay tax on Social Security anymore. That's good. While that cap excluded only 10% of earned income when it was established in the 1980s, while that cap excluded only 10% of earned income when it was established in the 1980s, increasing income inequality has boosted the that has deprived the system of the money it needs to survive at a time when historically low interest rates have further weakened the Social Security Trust Fund. So we have to expand the system, says Nancy Altman. Nancy Altman is just she's just an odd bird, man. I'm telling you. I don't know. A lot of the stuff I actually don't disagree with. I just find her proposals are no different than typical Washington, D.C. bureaucratic types where they need more control and you need less freedom. That's all there is to it. We have to expand the system. They want to increase benefits and eliminate the contribution cap. I just love what the Boston Globe says. They're depriving the system of money it needs to survive. It's not your money. It's not your money. It's the taxpayers' money. It's not the Social Security's money. Depriving the system of the money it needs. It's not your money. It's not your money. Say it again with me, Boss Globe. It's not your flipping money. It's the taxpayers' money. So Nancy, by all means, Nancy, tax yourself. Pay more into it. But if you want to put that to freaking other people, yeah, don't do it through D.C. Why don't you go out there and freaking campaign for it among the people who you want to raise their tax on, i.e. this guy. And I'm going to say, hell no, man. Hell no, we won't go. It's nuts. Social Security is extremely important to low-income people. They're less likely to work in jobs that have private pensions, so it's more. No one's working jobs that have private pensions anymore, Nancy. I mean, a few and far between. Lockheed Martin, they stopped their pension. But stop. And stop trying to push people against each other. All right, so here we got someone from the Urban Institute. Another report last March, the Urban Institute examined how growing disparities in health and disabilities have disadvantaged lower income people who depend most heavily on Social Security and other federal programs. We're seeing a lot of social changes that don't bode well, including wage stagnation. Okay, so we're all falling apart. BC's report published last month focused on adjustments devised by the Social Security Administration in the 1980s. The aim was to ensure that lifetime Social Security payouts and cost of the system would be roughly constant for beneficiaries of the same income with the average life expectancy, no matter when they chose to collect benefits. But the Americans living longer, the adjustments are now out of whack. I don't disagree with that for sure. That's why we need to raise the FRA to 70. So what's their old Nancy? Raise the FRA to 70, huh? Raise the FRA to 70? Want to do that, Nancy Altman and whoever the Urban Institute person is, because things are out of whack and that will save Social Security? No, they're never going to do that. Then what you could simply do then is just simply say, look, if you made more than, I don't know, we'll just use some number, $500,000 on average. If your total index earnings is over, I'm just throwing a number out there, 5 million, your FRA is 70. If your total index earnings is 1 million, your FRA is 62. That's what you should do it. I mean, my goodness, if Social Security is completely out of whack, just say, look at and that would be a good way to get people to understand what their statement looks like too. So your FRA is 62. If your total index earnings is $1 million or less, your FRA is 70. If your total index earnings is $5 million or more, that's simple, man. That means that the rich would be subject to a little bit more restrictions on when they can get their full benefit, and the poor would have access to earlier money without the restrictions. I got no problem with that. The penalty for claiming early is now too large. Why? It's always been the same thing. Why is it too large? I mean, it's always been 24 to 32%. I mean, so what? The 32% is too large. The 24% wasn't. Chen from BC. All right, the report doesn't attribute the trends to intentional policy changes, but it suggests low-income seniors forced to leave physically demanding jobs early and turn to Social Security to support their retirement are being hurt. See, this one I understand. How are they being hurt? Because they raised the FRA from 66 to 67? I mean, come on, man. That's just... is adding to the economic pressures on those with meager retirement savings as housing and health costs rise and fewer private employees pay out pensions. Social Security was FDR. From its start in 1935, it aimed to especially help workers who earn less. And the irony, of course, is when you do surveys of retirees, the vast majority said they're doing pretty well. I mean, that's just a fact. All right, let's see what's going on. Through a progressive benefit formula that gave greater weight to the first dollars of earnings, it still does. It still had the bend point. The first $960 of earnings you get of adjusted index month AIME or adjusted index monthly earnings, you get 900. You get 90% of that. That's still a fact. That hasn't changed. If you want to raise the first bend point to 2,000, by all means do so. And you want to lower the third bend point to 10%, do so too. I mean, I got no qualm with any of the ideas. I got no qualm with it. But stop this idea that getting rid of the cap on people who make more than $139,000, many of them which are just small business entrepreneurs, i.e. this guy, are going to freaking solve the problem. It's not. That is just, those guys make too much. We want that. That's just basic greed for people saying, oh, they make too much. It's not fair, man. Yeah, work 18 hours a day, man. Work 18 hours a day. Make $150,000 and tell me it's not fair. All right, get off my back. I can't stand that. But Josh, you just did a video on taxing hedge fund managers. Absolutely. 100% right. And education institutions. Because they aren't working 18 hours a day making $150,000 like most entrepreneurs are. They're making huge amounts of income, and they're turning around and giving it to charities tax deductible so the charities can fund these people like Extinction Rebellion and stuff like that, or these schools could fund these freaking totally segregated. It's just the whole thing's nuts. Nuts, I tell you. Old Josh is trying to work a job, paying 4 kids. Hey. All right. The program's evolved over the years. The ability to claim benefits early was offered to women in 1956 and extended to men in 1961. Well, the option of claiming later was introduced in 1972 but implemented gradually. Full retirement age was also put on a sliding scale. Those who turn to the traditional retirement age of 65 actually have to wait to 66 this year, for example. Those who are younger have to wait even longer till 67. Wow. Those who take the option of collecting early can claim as early as 62, but they do receive about 24 to 32% less depending on the year of birth. Data from Social Security, we already talked about that. Someone in a lower paying job may not want to or may be able to work as long. The typical higher income tend to work longer and will work at older age. See, I don't have any qualm with that. I just hate the putting people against each other. And notice they didn't interview anyone from my side of the equation, i.e., the conservative side. They didn't interview anyone and say, hey, what could idea more of a free market libertarian Republican? I mean, they interviewed Nancy Altman, Crazy Nancy. They interviewed the Urban Institute, very far left. They interviewed Chen, who, and we know Center for Retirement Research at BC has a very liberal taint to it. They didn't interview anyone from Cato Institute, Heritage Foundation, Reason Magazine, or even me. They didn't interview any of us to say, what do you think could be done? They just interviewed the left to push. And this is where, see what I'm saying? This is why the media is so biased, because the media doesn't interview other than their left-wing counterparts. They don't. And if they do interview one, they'll put one guy versus four counterparts. I'm telling you, read articles and notice how many of the quotes are coming from the left versus the right. You'll see it's one guy from the right, and generally speaking, he'll seem like a lunatic, where the other three or four from the left seem pretty moderate and pretty well spoken. I'm telling you, just start watching this on the media if you don't believe me. The New York Times, Washington Post, and just get a gauge, Because these are Boston Globe, LA Times, it's all the same. USA Today, it's all the same. It's not even Steven. It's not, because they all run in one group of people, and they're going to interview their friends and the people who are in their groups. They're not going to interview a guy from Heartland Institute in Illinois. They just don't do that. It's from Boston, New York, D.C., L.A. And just watch. I'm telling you, just read the newspaper, and you'll see what I'm talking about. You say, man, that guy Josh, he was right. It is a bias in one direction. All right, well, anyway, I figured you'd want to know that. At the end of the day, look, there's some adjustments I would have no qualm with. I'd want to see the proposal, but stop freaking thinking you're going to get the cap from high-income earners. That's going to fix it. It's not going to fix a freaking doggone thing. All right, we'll see you.